In this video today, we're going to have a look at technical sketching. In the beginning of the class, we need to follow two parallel kind of objectives. The first is to learn AutoCAD, or to learn enough AutoCAD to get you so that you can competently do the drawings that we're going to be doing later in the class, the engineering drawings using AutoCAD. But we also want to keep our focus, or at least to establish an understanding of what an engineering drawing is, specifically orthographic projection, and how we can learn to see three-dimensional objects and to put them on two-dimensional paper, which is something that we're going to be focusing on in the class. And that really doesn't have anything to do with CAD or with learning AutoCAD. So the other parallel line that we're going to be focusing on is going to be technical sketching. And through technical sketching, you're going to learn how to see objects, how to represent them orthographically on a piece of paper. So I have up here our Canvas front page. And this is the student view, so this is what you will see. And let's first look at the technical sketching assignment. So you'll see that Module 1 and Module 2, they both have these this duality, these two parts. So we have the CAD Module 1 and Drafting Module 1, which is technical sketching. Same thing for Module 2, CAD Module 2, and then Drafting Module 2. After these first two modules, Module 1 and Module 2, then it gets... by that time, you should be competent enough. You're still going to be learning, but competent enough with AutoCAD so that we can focus on just the AutoCAD or just the engineering drawing aspect of things using AutoCAD. But in these first couple of modules, we're going to be, like I said, splitting things up so that we have the CAD aspect of it and the technical sketching aspect of it. If I expand Drafting Module 1, you can see that there's 4 assignments in this first module: technical sketching exercise 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each one is worth 10 points, but that's really just to give you an idea of, you know, what the percent that you would get right on those are. If I expand this, you can see that each of the technical sketching exercises is going to be graded via this rubric. In the rubric, you can see that there's 3 criteria that I'm going to be looking at with the technical sketching: line quality, shape accuracy, and orthographic views. And I'll leave this for you to read and to understand on this. But shape accuracy has a little bit more of a weight, 4 points out of 10. But I would say that each of these 3 is basically going to be equally weighted. You know, in order to come up with 10, given 3 criteria, I had to weight one a little bit more than the other. So, so you can consider these 3 criteria to be more or less equal in terms of weight, things that you should be looking at. So in this first video, what I really want to do is I want to focus on the basic aspects of technical sketching. And most of these are going to be concerned with line quality, okay? So let's go back here to your original view, the modules, okay? And I'm going to switch to a different view right now. All right, so we're going to try this out. Here's my new sketching rig. So hopefully this will be a good way for me to kind of show you the technique that I want you to follow with sketching. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about sketching. When we talk about technical sketching in this class, we're not talking about artistic sketching. We're talking about the sketching that an engineer or designer would do in order to get ideas across, in order to get a concept or an idea out of that designer or engineer's head onto a piece of paper quickly and efficiently, so that they can share that idea or concept with other people, with other engineers, with other designers, with you know, whoever that they're trying to communicate with. So this is a communication tool. But it does not mean that you have to be artistic in any way, shape, or form. I am not artistic. So I've never taken an art class. So this is just going to be purely as a practical way to get an idea across, to communicate an idea. That being said, there are some very important rules and techniques that I do want you to follow, okay? Being that this is engineering technical sketching, we do have rules to follow because engineers love rules and standards, and there's a certain way that we want to be able to communicate our ideas across. We are going to be, you know, I'm going to be basically simplifying a lot of the technical sketching aspects of it so that you can just focus on really what's most important. And so let's get started. What equipment do you need? Well, you're looking at one part of it. You're looking at the piece of paper here. That's one necessary thing that you need with technical sketching. The other thing that you need is a pencil. Okay. Now, is there anything more that you need? Well, not in what we're doing here. Okay. We're not going to be using straight edges of any type. All right. This is sketching, so it's all going to be freehand. I do not want you to use an eraser. Okay. So yeah, I know that this pencil has an eraser on it, and you can have separate erasers like this. I don't want you to use erasers. Okay. Erasers, in my experience, they generally mess up a drawing. They also provide an excuse for maybe not focusing on the important aspects of sketching when you're getting started on this. So what you're looking at right here is really the sum total of what we're going to be using with our sketches, the paper and the pencil. Okay. Now, some of you will have a mechanical pencil, and some of you may not, and will be using a traditional wooden pencil. I have both, all right? But for sketching, I really like the traditional pencil much more, okay? I can control the tip, the sharpness, or in fact the dullness of it much better. It's cheaper, right? I also don't have the problem of breakage with a mechanical pencil like this. We always run into problems with, let me get this, I hope this has lead in it. Maybe it doesn't have lead in it, but you know what I'm talking about. When you get the lead in here, a lot of times you have problems with the lead breaking. We also can't really sharpen these, all right? They come in different weights. This is a 0.7 millimeter lead. There's 0.5 millimeter, there's 0.9 millimeter, you know, there's other types of lead in there. But inevitably, if you're not careful with how much it extends, you're going to run into breakage. And breakage when you're sketching is going to mess up your drawing. So we're going to keep it simple here. Paper and pencil, okay? So, sketching, the line quality is going to be very important. Okay. Also, the technique that you use for sketching is going to be very important. And we want to use the natural geometry of your body to help us to create straight lines. Okay. So when I talk about line quality, there's basically two types of line weights that we're going to be using in class in our technical sketching. There is thick, and then there is thin. We could throw in a third one, which is going to be very important, and that is construction weight. Okay, so a thick line is going to be a nice, solid, straight line. Okay, a thin line is still going to be visible, but it's going to be thinner, lighter than the solid dark line. Okay, construction weight line is just going to be a barest whiff of a line, something that you can barely see when you're looking at it. Okay, and the important thing here is to understand when and how to use these different line types. Okay, you're always going to start with construction weight lines. So if I wanted to sketch let's say a square in here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out the square. So this is going to be laid out with construction weight line. Okay, now you can barely see that there. I can barely see that there. Okay. Notice that I wasn't concerned with where the lines stop and start because this is construction weight. We're just laying things out. Now we want to go over it with the visible edges, okay, with the dark, thick line. So here is where I want to make sure I use the correct technique. And what I like to do is I like to use a pulling technique. Okay, so in other words, the way your arm and your body work, it's a lot easier for you to draw a straight line like this than it is like this, right? When you're going like this, you'll notice that we have a pivot point in our shoulder and our elbow. And so it's something that we have to constantly work on, is to keep that straight. But when we're pulling, it's a lot easier to keep the line straight. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be working on here now when I darken this in. So I'm going to make sure my paper is secure. I'm going to position my pencil right at the first intersection, and I'm just going to come down like this. Okay, all right, and then I can do the same thing over here. Notice that as I put in those dark lines, the visible, the construction line starts to fade further into the distance, right? So the act of putting a thick visible line over a construction line is going to hide it, which is what we want, okay? Now, what do I do about these? Do I just go like this because these are short lines, you know? No. What I want you to do is get used to rotating the paper so that we can then continue to use this kind of pulling technique. So I'm going to pull down like this, and notice I can focus on the stop and the start of the line, and then there's my square. Okay, nice, dark. You'll notice that the construction weight lines on the overshoots here are you know, somewhat still visible. They're really fading into the background because of the visible lines here. We're not going to worry about that. We're not going to get in there and erase these. All right. And one of the things that I should mention with erasing, you'll know from your own experience that when you erase lines, you typically mess things up. It smears the lead. It removes some of the paper. You know, it can even tear the paper. So I don't want you to erase. Okay, I don't want you to erase. So that's good. Now, if we want to get a more complicated shape, let me move this over to this side right here. If we want to get into a more complicated shape, we can still lay out our construction weight lines. So I can lay out the overall shape like this. Okay, maybe with some, we'll put some, we'll make this kind of like an isometric object, right, like that. And you'll notice in none of these I'm measuring anything, okay? Scale is going to be judged by the grid that we're going to be using for it. We're not going to be measuring anything. So there I have my outline like this. With construction weight lines, if you want to change something, if you want to make it a little bit different, if you need to adjust something, it's construction weight lines. So it's not going to be a problem. So if I want to say, you know what, I don't want it to be shaped like that. I want it to go up like this and maybe not as deep. So I can continue to do that. And I don't need to erase anything. So we're not erasing construction weight lines. And if you lay out all the lines properly with construction weight lines, then the visible lines are going to be just the next stage. So you work out all your problems with construction weight lines, and then you add the visible. Okay. So now at this point, I have a pretty good point on this. You'll notice that the the pencil is not finely sharp. It's not to a razor tip, but it's kind of dulled. And the dullness is actually something that is going to be good for sketching. So now I can come in, and I'm going to be using the pulling technique. So I'm going to be pulling down like this. And what I can do is I can work on all of the lines that are going in this direction. All right? Now, I don't always do this, but this is something for a simple object. Now I'm going to rotate it like so. And I'm going to continue this. You'll notice that I'm not doing any feathering. I've seen this before where people will kind of feather their lines in like that. We don't want to feather anything in. We want to be very solid and continuous with our strokes on this. Okay, like so. And then I can even turn this sideways so that I can really get a good line in there like this. Okay, and then there we go. Okay, so sketching is very simple, all right, but it's something that we can focus on and get better and better at it. Okay, I want to keep it simple for you, so I want you to focus on really 3 different line weights: solid, dark, thick, a thin line weight, which I didn't do in any of these examples, and then the barest whiff of a construction line weight. Okay. I also want you to focus on the technique of rotating the paper and pulling in one direction, because that's going to give your lines a much easier way to maintain their straightness. Okay. We'll talk about curves in the next part of this, but right now what I want to do is switch out this, and we'll look at more of an example. Now, what I have here is this is not one of your assignments. Okay, so this is a separate drawing here. Here, let me adjust this a little bit. There we go, right like that. Okay. But here I want to show you how we can use the techniques that I just talked about with our gridded paper. So all of the sketching assignments that you're going to be working on are going to be using a gridded sheet like this. Okay, so it's going to help a little bit. I don't want you to think of the grid necessarily as your construction weight lines. You can still go over them. And in fact, some of you, when you print these out, because you're going to print these out, you may have different line weights on from your printed sheet. I've even gone and made my prints appear lighter so that the grid kind of fades further into the background. Okay, so let's look at recreating this. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to focus on here the A. This is going to help me get started on this, and I want to lay this out. When I'm laying this out, when there's curves involved, okay, like we have a curve here and a curve here, and then we have a circle here and here, I want to save those for last. Okay, I want to deal with all the straight lines because those are the easiest ones. Curves are, always going to be a bit challenging. Okay, so it says here, draw a freehand sketch using A as the reference corner. Okay, one grid of the given drawing equals one grid of the new sketch. So we're not going to be scaling anything up or down. It's just going to be one grid here is equal to one grid over here. So let's get started on this. So then from left to right here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Let me start that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, so 21, I'll just put a little note there. And then going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this is symmetrical, so 10. So we have 10 here. So 21 by 10. Okay, so here, if I'm starting in this corner, and that's where I started my 21 and my 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, right here. So I can lay out my construction weight line right here, and then going up 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right here. So right away, I'm going to go ahead and frame this in. And you'll notice I'm using construction weight going over the grid. You know, I don't have to worry about exactly matching the grid, right? This is construction weight line. That's the whole idea behind this. Now, the object is symmetrical about this horizontal layout. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll mark that right there, and I'll come across here. And then I have these little notches, right? So the notches are from the A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we go up like this, and they're 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like so. And then we go like this, and we go like this, and then they go 2 up, 1, 2, so I can come across here and put the 2 up like this. Now, in order to get the outline, I want to mark where the curve starts and stops on each side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, and it's going to be 5 on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can go like this. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We go like this. Okay. So I know that you're going to have a hard time seeing this, but what I've done is I've laid out the straight edges using construction weight, and now I'm going to go over these. Okay. So there's nothing really vertical here right now that I'm going to turn this to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and go like this. So of course, when you're going dark like this, you want to make sure that you are following the right lines. That could mess you up. Okay. So there we have the outline there. Okay. Now, we do have hidden lines here. Let me put this in. We do have 2 hidden lines right there and right there on the left. One grid or one square over from these notches. So I'm going to lay this out with a construction weight line right like that. Now, we haven't done any of the hidden lines. Hidden lines are going to be not quite as thick as the visible edges, but they still need to be visible, so to speak. So we have a couple of different options. One, you can modulate how you can adjust how hard you press on it, right? So I pressed pretty hard on the visible, so I want to press less on this. And what I'll do is I'm just pressing less right there. Okay. The other way to do this is to have 2 pencils, one that's a little bit sharper. Okay. And this is going to naturally give a thinner line, so I can notice I didn't really worry about the exact spacing, the size of the dashes. We just want to make something that looks good. Okay, so there's my outline of the object so far. Now what I need to do is do the curves. All right, and I'm going to start with these 2 smaller circles in there. And to do that, what I want to do is I want to lay this out. Okay, and I'm going to lay this out with a square. So the radius of this circle right here is 1, 2 grids. All right, so 2 squares in radius. So I'm going to find the center, which is right here, and I'm going to lay this out. So we got 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, like so. And we'll do the same thing on this side. So here's the center. So we're going to go 2 and 2, like so. Okay. Now again, it's going to be hard for you to see that, but you have to trust me that the construction weight lines are there. Okay. Now, because I've divided this up into, or I've drawn a square around the circle over here, I basically have a grid. And now what I can do for drawing my circle is I can focus on one grid at a time, one area at a time. So now this is going to be one of the most challenging parts, but I'm going to lay this, I'm going to continue using construction weight lines, and basically I want to start here and I want to end here, and I want to get a nice curve in there. Okay, so I'm working with my body geometry, right, the way it moves, and there, and then when you, like so, I move that a little bit off the screen. Now that's not exactly perfect, right? But I'm using construction weight lines, so I can kind of fine tune this. I can bring this one a little bit out. That one maybe a little bit more out like that. That one, okay, so that looks good. When I'm happy with this is when I want to darken it in. I just have to remember which construction weight lines I'm going to follow, but I'm going to go like this. And because we're drawing a smaller curve, it's a little bit easier to control. And by starting and stopping at each quadrant point, I can focus on making it match up nice. And so there we go. Okay, not perfect, but again, this is not an art class. This is for engineers and designers. So let's go on the other side over here. Okay, so I'm going to lay this out again with a nice technical construction weight line here with a curve. Usually what happens is one of them looks really kind of shaky and the other one looks a little bit better. There we go, right there. That, I think I need to improve that a little bit there. All right, so that one looks pretty good. So let's make sure I get this good in frame. And I'm going to come across like this. And I'm going to go from there. There we go. Okay. All right, and let's focus on the outside curve now. This has a radius of, well, I don't really need to talk about the radius because I already have it marked out. But this is going to be a little bit more challenging because this curve is larger. So I really need to do a good job of watching the curvature and laying it out with construction weight lines. Making sure it looks like I expect it to look. All right, that one looks pretty good. And now I'm going to focus on this one right here so I know where it starts and stops. And you know what? If you make a mistake with construction weight lines, who cares, right? You don't erase construction weight lines. You just keep going, right? You just fix the line. All right, so that looks a little, this one's a little bit wonky. So let me curve that in a little bit. There we go. All right, so now let's go ahead and darken this in. So again, I'm going to work, the way I like to work with curves is kind of using this direction, right? So we'll go like this. We'll go like this. And then we'll go like this. And we'll go like this. All right, nice and easily done. Okay, so there we go. Now we have our finished sketch. All right. What do we do with the construction lines that are left there? Absolutely nothing. Okay. Now I would also probably add, or we're going to need to add the center marks here. Those are thin weight lines like the hidden lines, so we're just going to do this. And we already have construction lines there, so I don't need to do any more construction lines. There we go. Okay, so that's our first sketch done. Again, we just focused on the basics here. Construction lines to start, lay everything out. Don't worry about mistakes with construction weight lines, just fix the lines, okay? And then we come back in and we darken and go through first and get all the horizontal and vertical lines, because those are going to be the easiest ones, and then you can focus on the curves, okay? All right, I'll see you in the next video.